There's been a lot said about Scotland's Scottish Abortion Law Review Group, which has come up with some absolutely outrageous findings and recommendations to the Scottish Government. But I will cover them. But the reason for this video is to look into how this was set up by our old friend Humza Yousaf, how the chair of this committee is actually on the leadership group for Britain's largest private service provider for abortion clinics, and is indeed one of at least two connected to that board on the committee. Out of the 13-person committee, not one has got pro-life leanings, and the vast majority, almost all, have in the past shown some pro-abortion leanings. And this is actually outrageous. And as I say, everybody's talking about what they've recommended, and that is horrific. But it's how this was set up, why it was set up, and the people involved that's actually, I believe, the biggest story. And I'll go through every single one of them, piece by piece. And indeed, Humza Yousaf, who's the very person who instigated this committee while he was during his ill-fated leadership of the SNP, and indeed his position as a First Minister. So this actual thing was set up to recommend to the Scottish Government how it should act with the current abortion laws. And indeed, it's actually recommended we totally abolish them because it should not be criminal in any way. Some of the most horrific recommendations are no time limit at all on the termination of pregnancies, right up till birth, which is frightening. We have the reduction in who gets to decide who has and who hasn't to get an abortion. And we are going to give people the ability to abort their pregnancies for reasons as stupid as they don't like the sex of this child. This is a barbaric issue, and I know abortion is a very, very sticky subject, very emotive subject, and I understand that. But even those who want abortion to be slackened a wee bit, the rules, which I can understand, I don't need to agree with them, but I can understand the logic behind some of these arguments. But even those people must understand that terminating a pregnancy just because of the sex of the child, and right up until birth date, is absolutely frightening. So Humza's the one who decided to set up this Scottish Abortion Law Review Group, or expert group, as some people are suggesting. And he picked Professor Aulania as the lead on that group. Now, she's the chair of the government's Women Health Champion, and Scottish Government's Health Champion, so obviously she already had close connections and relationships with Scottish Government, and Humza Yousaf had previously been the Health Minister, so you can imagine he would know quite a lot about her and her feelings, particularly on such an emotive topic. Now, she's been a strong advocate to decriminalise and treat abortion as healthcare, not a crime. And as a chair, she emphasised the current law is not fit for purpose and stigmatises women. She supports removing time limits and clinical-led decisions, which include on fetal sex. Now, she is, I'll just get this, sorry, where are we? Former trustee of BPAS, that's the UK's largest independent abortion provider. She's currently the chair of BPAS's Centre for Reproductive Rights and Communications. She's a former director of Family Planning and Well Women Scotland, NHS Lothian, which also provides abortions. This woman is the chair. This is a woman who has got a massive say in making abortions more widely available, which will evidently lead to more abortions. And she sits as the chair in one group for the business in Britain that is the largest provider of abortions. Can you see a conflict of interest there? Now you've got Dr. Alastair Campbell. He was a representative for the Royal College of Obstetricians. He supported expanded access through this Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And he's been involved in NHS loathing maternity and in termination of pregnancy services. Again, not so independent. We've got Professor Marion Bain, Deputy Chief Medical Officer, representing the Chief Medical Officer on this group. And her abortion views and background are government aligned. She views abortion through a public health lens only, supports decriminalisation to reduce stigma aligned with clinical practice, and she's neutral in the specifics, but endorses the report's healthcare framing. She's got no direct association to any abortion providers, but oversees public health policy, including reproductive services via the Scottish Government. Another one who works for the Scottish Government in this independent board. Are you with me? So that's us on 3. Number 4, Sinead Cook. She's a Faculty of Sexual and Reproduction Health Care. That's her current role. Now, her abortion views and background, she's pro-access advocate. And her faculty pushes for barrier-free abortion services and has criticised decriminalisation for deterring care. She supports self-managed abortions and reduced restrictions. This is before she gets selected for this independent committee. Now, all their previous views, if I can find them out in a 30-second internet search, then surely the people that are building these groups would know. And so far, as that is into 4, all pro-abortion. We've then got Professor Sharon Cameron. She's a Scottish abortion care providers consultant gynaecologist for NHS Lothian. We've also seemed to have a lot of people in one healthcare area. Now, her views and background, leading researcher on abortion safety and access, supports early medical abortions without ultrasound confirmation, and views abortion as extremely effective and safe when legal. Prefers natural terminology like termination of pregnancy to reduce stigma, near universal support for it as a woman's choice in her surveys. But she has been previously criticised anti-abortion protests for intimidating patients. And she's a co-chair of the Scottish Abortion Care Providers. Let me just repeat that. The co-chair for the Scottish Abortion Care Providers, a group for people who provide the service of abortions. NHS Lothian again, and she leads the abortion services at the Chalmers Centre. Heads research on telemedicine abortions. That's the 5th person. The 6th person, Sarah Wallage. She works for the Scottish Abortion Care Providers. Again, working for the care providers. And her background, clinical provider representative, advocate for streamlined access, as in easier, including late-term options. This is a view she's held publicly before being picked for this committee, and opposes criminal penalties that hinder care. And in this Scottish Abortion Care Providers, she is the co-chair for the group who cover Scottish Abortion Care Providers. Let's look at the next one, Professor Sally Sheldon. She's a University of Bristol Professor of Law. Now, her abortion views, prominent pro-choice legal scholar, has authored books, articles arguing for full decriminalisation. Are you with me? She's been critical of the old act as outdated and supports abortion right up to birth and as a woman's autonomous choice, co-presented on Scottish reforms as a missed opportunity without broader liberalisation. She is a pro-abortion activist. Now, she's a former trustee, which here this one, you'll have heard this before, BPAS. They are the largest provider of private sector abortions in the UK. And this woman is the second woman to have connections with them on this board. after the chair. Now, Dr Lindsay Mitchell, University of Strathclyde, abortion law specialist, co-advocates for reform in Scotland, emphasising reproductive rights and decriminalisation to protect women from prosecution. And again, another one who's before the thing even started is telling us what she believes. So that's everyone so far. Dr Carrie Purcell, the Open University lecturer on social policy. She was a quantitative researcher on abortion experiences, the stigma and the self-management. Supports reproductive justice, including decriminalisation to address pain, access barriers, societal norms. Her work highlights how criminal law exacerbates inequality and trauma for women. This was all before she got invited to be on this committee. Andrew Lothian, the Law Society of Scotland. He's a legal expert in medical law, supports modernising abortion frameworks to reflect clinical realities, including decriminalisation. Another one, who before the thing even starts is telling us what they want. We've got Professor Anne-Marie Farrell, University of Edinburgh. She was a health law scholar with expertise in reproductive rights and bioethics. Her work on regulatory framework supports patient autonomy in reproductive health, including abortion, as part of broader women's rights. Contributed globally to discussions on access without criminalisation. We've not found one who's not give us more abortion rights, right? Rachel Clark, British Pregnancy Advisory Service. Remember them? Third time you've heard them. Biggest supplier of private sector abortions in the UK. The third member that's got a connection to them. And she's head of their advocacy. They provide 100,000 abortions per year just now. And that'll go up. If this is stuff, if even half of this stuff is accepted. Jill Wood, Representative Advisory Group for Women's Equalities and Reproductive Rights Group. Already there. She supports unrestricted access, including, and she has publicly said that should include sex-selective abortions, and views criminalisation as a barrier to equality. So, you know, I don't know what number we're up to now, but I think that's us done the 13. Not one or anything other than an advocate for. Now, I'm not clever enough, and I think the abortion thing should be perfectly honest with you, ultimately women's decisions, right? So I'm not telling you what's right and what's wrong. What I am telling you is this group set up by Humza Yousaf is not independent, because a lot of them work for the government and NGOs and NHS. He picked the woman who has been the chair for the largest provider of private abortions in the UK, 100,000 a year. There's 3 people from that one group on this board, and every single person on it has identified as, or out of those ones, I think there was about 3 that were kind of neutral, right? So this is just a farce. It's an absolute farce that these groups, yet another one, set up by a government to sort of put it at arm's length and say, well, they told us this. When you kind of know what the outcome's going to be by the people you put in the committee. You could have guessed the outcome of this committee before the committee had a single meeting. And that's wrong. Now, I'm not that clever to tell you what we should and shouldn't have for abortion rights and abortion laws. But you cannot do it on the recommendation of such a one-sided group, because that is ridiculous. And it's just another example of how governments really operate. They set up these groups, not to give them advice, but so that they can pass the responsibility of a decision that they know the outcome of this thing before the thing starts. And it's an absolute scam. We see the same all over the place. We see it with drug issues. We see it with all these charities and NGOs that set up. We bring them in as stakeholders for advice. You don't need to bring them in. You know the answers they're going to give. And if you didn't want those answers, you wouldn't bring them in the first place. And it's a total scam.
And shame on you, Humza, for putting this together. If you want others to see the video, click the thumbs up, put your comments below, hit the share button. If you've not done so, or you think you've already done so, just double check you're still subscribed to the channel. But more important than all that, unless you're the type of person that sets up all this shite, costs the country millions or tens of millions every year in these things, to just give you the answers that you already want, then not you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.